The deep blue waters of the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly in all directions. Dr. Amy Carter stood on the deck of the research vessel Neptune's Dream, watching the sun rise over the horizon. She had been studying marine life for 10 years, but this expedition was different. Her team was investigating strange readings from the ocean floor, signals that didn't match any known sea creatures. Amy adjusted her equipment and looked at the data on her tablet. The readings showed massive structures moving beneath the waves, far too large to be whales or any other known animals. Her colleague Jake Miller, the ship's engineer, walked up beside her with a cup of coffee in his hands. "Still getting those weird signals?" Jake asked, looking at the screen over Amy's shoulder. "Yes, and they're getting stronger," Amy replied. "Whatever's down there, it's big." "Really big." Lisa Brooks, their communications officer, called out from the bridge. "Amy, you need to see this. The sonar is picking up something huge rising from the deep." Amy and Jake rushed to the bridge. On the sonar screen, they could see massive objects moving upward from the ocean floor. The shapes were too regular to be natural formations. They looked like ships, but unlike any ships built by humans. "How many are there?" Amy asked, staring at the screen. "At least 6, maybe more," Lisa answered. "They're moving fast and heading straight for us." Before anyone could react, the water around their ship began to glow with a strange blue light. The ocean's surface started to bubble and foam, then breaking through the waves like metal mountains. Enormous ships emerged from the depths. Amy had never seen anything like them. The ships were covered in scales that shimmered in the morning light. They moved through the water with impossible grace, defying everything she knew about physics and engineering. These were not human ships. "We need to call for help," Jake said, reaching for the radio. But before he could send a message, beams of energy shot out from the alien vessels. The beams hit their ship's engines and communication equipment, disabling them instantly. The Neptune's Dream was now floating helplessly on the calm ocean. One of the alien ships moved closer. Amy could see figures moving on its deck. They were tall and covered in what looked like natural armor made of scales. Their faces were elongated with large eyes that reflected the sunlight like mirrors. "Those aren't human," Lisa whispered, backing away from the window. The aliens launched smaller boats toward the Neptune's Dream. As they came closer, Amy could see them more clearly. They stood over 7 feet tall, with powerful builds and skin that looked like living armor. Their hands ended in clawed fingers, and they moved with the fluid grace of creatures born in the water. The lid alien stepped onto their deck and spoke in a voice that sounded like waves crashing on rocks. Somehow Amy understood the words, though she didn't know how. "I am Commander Zephic of the Kethra Empire. You humans have entered our territory without permission. Your species will learn to respect the masters of the deep." Amy stepped forward, trying to stay calm despite her fear. "We're scientists." "We didn't know this was your territory. We're just studying marine life." The alien commander looked at her with those strange mirror eyes. "Scientists?" He made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your primitive tools cannot understand the depths we rule. You will come with us." Jake moved protectively in front of Amy. "You can't just take us. Our government will look for us." "Your government knows nothing of the deep places," Zephic replied. "They cannot help you now." More aliens boarded their ship. They moved with military precision, quickly gathering Amy and her team. Lisa tried to send out a distress signal, but the aliens had already disabled all their equipment. As they were led to the alien boats, Amy noticed something interesting. The aliens' technology seemed to blend biology with machinery. Their boats looked like they were grown rather than built, with surfaces that pulsed like living tissue. "Where are you taking us?" Amy asked as they were loaded onto one of the strange vessels. "To face judgment before Supreme Commander Vextar," Zephic answered. "He will decide what to do with your species." The alien boat dove beneath the surface, and Amy was amazed to find that she could still breathe. Some kind of field surrounded them, creating a bubble of air underwater. Through the transparent walls, she could see the alien city ship approaching. It was massive, easily 10 times larger than any human aircraft carrier. The ship looked like a combination of a submarine and a living creature, with sections that moved and pulsed with bioluminescent light. Thousands of the scaled aliens moved through its corridors and chambers. As their boat docked inside the city ship, Amy felt a mixture of fear and wonder. She was the first human to see this incredible place, but she might also be the last if these aliens decided humans were a threat. They were escorted through corridors filled with alien technology. Amy tried to memorize everything she saw, hoping somehow this knowledge might help them escape. The walls were covered with displays showing images from across the galaxy, revealing that the HFY Empire controlled many worlds. Finally, they reached a massive chamber where Supreme Commander Vexitar waited. He was even larger than the other aliens, with scales that shifted color like an oil slick. His presence filled the room with an aura of ancient power and authority. "So these are the humans," Vexitar said in a voice like distant thunder. "The species that thinks it owns the waters of this world." Amy found her voice again. "We don't think we own anything. We're just trying to learn and understand." "Understanding?" Vexitar's scales darkened. "Your species pollutes our oceans, kills our creatures, and now sends ships into our sacred depths. You show no understanding at all." The Supreme Commander circled around them, studying them like specimens. "Your species needs to learn its place in the cosmic order. We have ruled the deep places for thousands of years. Your brief existence means nothing to us." Jake stepped forward, his engineer's mind working. "If you've been here so long, why reveal yourselves now?" "Because you have become too numerous, too bold," Vexitar replied. "Your ships venture deeper, your pollution spreads further. It is time to remind the surface dwellers who truly rules this world." Amy realized they were seeing something unprecedented. First contact with an alien species, but not the peaceful meeting that scientists had hoped for. These aliens saw humans as a problem to be solved. "What do you want from us?" Amy asked, Vexitar's mirror eyes fixed on her. "You will serve as an example to your species. Tomorrow you will face our greatest champion in the sacred arena. Your defeat will be broadcast to every corner of your world, showing them the futility of challenging the HFY Empire." As guards led them away to holding cells, Amy's mind raced. She had to find a way to survive whatever trial awaited her, not just for herself and her team, but for all of humanity. Amy woke up in a cell made of some kind of transparent crystal. The walls hummed with energy, and she could see that touching them would probably result in a painful shock. Jake and Lisa were in similar cells nearby, both looking worried but unharmed. The holding area was unlike any prison Amy had ever imagined. The walls were alive with shifting patterns of light, and she could hear the distant sound of water flowing through hidden channels. Everything about this place reminded her that she was deep underwater, in a world completely foreign to humans. "Amy, are you okay?" Jake called out from his cell. "I'm fine," she replied, examining the energy barrier that kept her trapped. "Have you seen any way out of here?" "I've been watching the guards," Lisa said quietly. "They change shifts every few hours, but there are always at least two of them." As if summoned by their conversation, footsteps echoed in the corridor. But the figure that appeared was not one of their HFY captors. Instead, a different alien approached, one that looked almost like the scaled warriors but somehow different. This creature was shorter than the others, with scales that had lost their shine. Scars covered his arms and face, and he moved with the careful gait of someone who had been injured many times. When he spoke, his voice was rougher than the other aliens Amy had heard. "I am Velthar," he said, stopping in front of Amy's cell. "I was once a warrior of the HFY, but no longer." "What happened to you?" Amy asked, curious despite her fear. "I questioned the wisdom of our leaders," Velthar replied. "I suggested that perhaps conquest was not always the answer. For this, I was stripped of my rank and thrown in here with the other prisoners." Another voice spoke from a cell Amy hadn't noticed before. "And I am Quinrex of the Astari people. My race was conquered by the HFY 50 years ago." Amy looked toward the voice and saw a being unlike either humans or HFY. Quinrex was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large, gentle eyes. His people had clearly been built for thinking rather than fighting. "You're both prisoners too?" Amy asked. "For different reasons," Velthar explained. "But we are all here to serve the same purpose. Tomorrow, one of us will face Mordak the Eternal in the sacred arena." "Who is Mordak?" Jake asked, though his voice suggested he didn't really want to know the answer. Quinrex answered in a sad voice. "Mordak is what the HFY call their greatest weapon, a creature they created for the sole purpose of killing their enemies in combat. For 3,000 years it has never lost a fight." "Never?" Lisa whispered. "Never," Velthar confirmed. "Champions from dozens of worlds have faced the beast. Warriors, soldiers, even other monsters captured from across the galaxy. All have fallen to its claws." Amy felt a chill run down her spine. "And one of us has to fight this thing?" "Not one of us," Velthar said, looking directly at her. "You, the human female. Supreme Commander Vextar has decided that your species' introduction to Cathara power should be memorable. That's insane, Jake said, gripping the bars of his cell. Amy's a scientist, not a warrior. The Kithara do not care about such distinctions, Quinrex explained. To them, all lesser species are the same. They believe that by defeating you in single combat, they will break the spirit of your entire world. Amy sat down heavily on the simple bench in her cell. She had always been good at solving problems, but this seemed impossible. How could she, a marine biologist, possibly defeat a creature that had killed trained warriors for thousands of years? Tell me about this arena, she said finally. If I'm going to face this thing, I need to understand what I'm walking into. Velthar looked surprised by her calm tone. You are not begging for mercy or trying to escape? Would either of those things work? Amy asked. No, he admitted. Then I need information instead. Amy's scientific training was taking over. When faced with an unknown problem, gather data first. Quinrex spoke up. The arena is a marvel of Cathara engineering. It is a perfect sphere, 500 feet in diameter. The environment inside can be changed to match any world or condition. Jungle, desert, ocean, even the vacuum of space. How does it decide what environment to create? Amy asked. The beast chooses, Velthar explained. Mordak has fought in every possible terrain. It adapts to whatever conditions exist. Amy thought about this. What does the creature look like? How does it fight? Both aliens looked uncomfortable. It is difficult to describe, Quinrex said finally. Mordak is 12 feet tall and covered in armor that seems to be part of its body. Its claws can cut through any known material, and it moves faster than something that large should be able to move. But the worst part, Velthar added, is its intelligence. This is not just a mindless beast. It thinks, it plans, it learns from each fight. That is why it has never been defeated. Has anyone ever tried to communicate with it? Amy asked. Both aliens stared at her in surprise. Communicate, Velthar repeated. It is a weapon, not a person. The Cathara created it to kill, nothing more. But Amy was thinking about something else. As a marine biologist, she had spent years learning to understand creatures that couldn't speak. Whales, dolphins, even octopi had complex intelligence that could be reached if you knew how to try. These fights, she said, are they broadcast? Do other people watch them? Oh yes, Quinrex said sadly. The entire Kithara Empire watches. It is meant to show their power and discourage rebellion among conquered peoples. And they'll broadcast my fight to Earth too? That is their plan, Velthar confirmed. They want your species to see what happens to those who challenge the Empire. Amy nodded slowly. An idea was beginning to form in her mind, though she wasn't sure it would work. How long do these fights usually last? Minutes, Velthar said. Sometimes less. The creature is very efficient, but the arena can create any environment? Any environment that has ever existed on any world, Quinrex confirmed. Why do you ask these questions? Amy stood up and walked to the front of her cell. Because I'm starting to think that maybe this Mordak isn't exactly what the Cathara claim it is. What do you mean? Jake asked. I mean that in my experience, truly intelligent creatures don't just kill for no reason. They kill for food, for territory, for protection. But not just for sport. Amy looked at her fellow prisoners. What if this creature isn't fighting because it wants to? What if it's fighting because it has to? Velthar shook his head. You think like a scientist, not a warrior. The beast was created for combat. It knows nothing else, maybe, Amy said. Or maybe no one has ever tried to show it that there could be something else. The three aliens looked at each other with expressions of disbelief. But Amy was already planning. She had less than 24 hours to figure out how to survive an encounter with the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. Her only advantage was that everyone expected her to die quickly. Sometimes, Amy thought, the best strategy was to do something nobody expected. The next morning, guards came to escort Amy to the arena. Before they reached her cell, she noticed something that the others had missed. Hidden beneath layers of newer construction, there were older markings on the walls. The symbols were different from the Kithara writing she had seen elsewhere in the ship. Wait, she called out to Velthar. Those markings on the wall, what are they? The former Cathara warrior looked where she was pointing. His scales shifted color slightly, which Amy had learned meant he was surprised. Those are very old symbols. From before my people built this ship. I had forgotten they were there. Can you read them? Amy asked as the guards opened her cell. Some of them, Velthar replied. They speak of a great sadness, a lost people, but the guards are coming. There is no time. As the Kythera guards led Amy through the corridors toward the arena, she kept thinking about those ancient markings. Something about them felt important, though she couldn't explain why. The arena was even more impressive than Quinrex had described. It was a perfect sphere suspended in the center of a massive chamber. Thousands of Kythera filled the viewing areas, their scales shimmering with excitement. Amy could see Supreme Commander Vextar in a place of honor, surrounded by other high-ranking officials. But before they took her into the arena itself, the guards led her to a preparation chamber. Here, she was given basic protective gear and what they called ceremonial weapons, though they looked more like tools than actual weapons to Amy. "The combat will begin shortly," one guard announced. "Do you have any final requests?" Amy thought quickly. "I want to see the arena before the fight begins, to understand the space where I'll be fighting." The guard considered this. "It is unusual but not forbidden." "Very well." They led her to an observation platform that looked down into the arena. The sphere was currently empty, its walls showing a neutral gray color. But as Amy watched, the walls began to change, creating what looked like a rocky, mountainous terrain. "The beast chooses its preferred environment," the guard explained. "This is what Mordak finds most comfortable." Amy studied the artificial landscape carefully. Her eye was drawn to certain rock formations that seemed oddly regular. "Those aren't natural rocks," she said. "What do you mean?" The guard asked. "The formations, the way they're arranged. They look like ruins of some kind. Old buildings, maybe." The guard's scale shifted color. "That is impossible. The arena creates only natural environments." But Amy was certain she was right. Those formations were the remains of structures built by intelligent beings. As she watched, more details appeared in the arena's environment. There were definitely ruins hidden among the rocks, and some of them had the same symbols she had seen in the prison area. "I need to see those markings up close," Amy said. "That is not possible. The combat begins soon." "Then let me ask you something," Amy said, turning to face the guard. "How long has this arena been in use?" "Since the founding of our empire over 3,000 years ago." "And how long has Mordak been fighting here?" "Since the beginning. It was the first opponent to fight in the sacred arena." Amy felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. Where did Mordak come from originally? The guard hesitated. "It was created by our finest scientists." "Created from what?" "I do not know such details. I am only a guard." But Amy could tell from the way his scales had changed color that he was not telling the complete truth. Either he knew more than he was saying, or he suspected something that he didn't want to admit. Meanwhile, in another part of the ship, Jake and Lisa were trying to find a way to help Amy. They had convinced their guards to let them watch the fight from a maintenance area near the arena's control systems. Jake was studying the technology, trying to understand how it worked. "Look at this," he whispered to Lisa. "These systems are incredibly complex, but some of the components look really old, like they were built by someone else and just adapted by the Kythera." Lisa was monitoring the communication frequencies. "I'm picking up something strange," she said. "There are signals coming from inside the arena itself, but they're not from the Kythera control systems." "What kind of signals?" "I don't know, but they're very complex. Almost like some kind of language." Back in the preparation chamber, Amy was given her final instructions. "You will enter the arena when the horn sounds," the guard told her. "The combat ends when one fighter cannot continue. And if I somehow win," the guard made that sound that Amy had learned was Kythera laughter, "then you will have accomplished something that no being in 3,000 years has managed. But it will not happen." Amy was led to a small chamber that connected directly to the arena. Through the transparent wall, she could see the artificial landscape waiting for her. Somewhere in that rocky terrain, Mordak the Eternal was also waiting. But Amy had made a decision. Instead of the ceremonial weapons the Kythera had given her, she had convinced them to let her bring some of her scientific equipment. "If I'm going to die," she had told them, "let me die as what I am, a scientist." The horn sounded, a deep note that echoed through the arena. The door opened and Amy stepped into the artificial world. The air inside the arena felt different, charged with energy and something else Amy couldn't identify. She walked carefully among the rock formations, heading toward what she believed were the ruins she had spotted from above. As she got closer, she could see that she had been right. These were definitely the remains of buildings, and they were covered with the same symbols she had seen in the prison area. But these carvings were much more detailed and extensive. Amy knelt down next to one of the symbol clusters and began to study them. Her years of studying marine life had taught her to recognize patterns in languages, even when they came from completely alien sources. The symbols told a story of a peaceful people who had lived in harmony with their environment, a people who had been great builders and thinkers, who had created beautiful cities and works of art, and a people who had been destroyed when the Kythera Empire expanded into their territory. But the most shocking revelation was in the final set of symbols. They didn't just tell the story of a dead civilization. They told the story of survivors. A few members of this peaceful race had been taken alive when their world was conquered, taken to serve as curiosities and test subjects for Kythera science. Amy felt her heart racing as she understood what she was reading. Mordak wasn't created by the Kythera. Mordak was one of the survivors of the conquered race, modified and changed by Kythera science, turned into a weapon against its will. A sound behind her made Amy turn around. Standing 20 feet away, partially hidden by the artificial rocks, was the creature she was supposed to fight. Mordak the Eternal was exactly as large and terrifying as the others had described. Its body was covered in what looked like living armor, and its claws gleamed with deadly sharpness. But as Amy looked into its eyes, she saw something that no one had mentioned. She saw intelligence, and she saw pain. "Hello, Mordak," Amy said softly. "I think I know who you really are." Mordak stopped moving when Amy spoke. The massive creature tilted its head, studying her with eyes that held far more intelligence than any weapon should possess. Amy could hear the excited voices of the Kythera audience above them, expecting the fight to begin at any moment. Instead, Amy slowly sat down on one of the ancient stones and placed her hands flat on the ground in front of her. It was a posture of non-aggression that she had learned from studying animal behavior. She kept her voice low and calm. "I know this isn't your real home," she said to the creature. "I know you didn't choose to be here." Mordak's armored head moved slightly, and Amy thought she heard a sound that might have been surprise. The creature took a step closer, but not in the aggressive manner that everyone expected. Amy reached into her equipment pack and pulled out a small device she used for recording whale songs. She had modified it during her time in the cell, hoping it might help her communicate. She began playing a series of mathematical sequences, simple patterns that any intelligent being should recognize. The response was immediate. Mordak's eyes widened, and it made a sound unlike anything Amy had ever heard. It was musical, complex, and filled with emotion. The creature was trying to communicate back. "They changed you," Amy said, pointing to the biomechanical armor that covered much of Mordak's body. "They took away your voice, your freedom, your choice, but they couldn't take away who you really are." High above them, Supreme Commander Vextar was growing angry. "Why is the human not fighting?" he demanded. "Order the beast to attack." But the control technicians were staring at their instruments in confusion. "The creature is not responding to commands, Supreme Commander. Something is interfering with the control signals." What they didn't know was that Jake and Lisa had found a way to access the arena's systems from their maintenance area. Lisa had been right about the signals coming from inside the arena. They were coming from Mordak itself, and they were getting stronger. "It's like the creature is fighting against its own programming," Jake whispered to Lisa. "Amy's doing something that's making it remember." In the arena, Amy had stood up and was slowly approaching Mordak. The creature lowered itself closer to the ground, bringing its massive head down to Amy's level. This close, she could see that tears were flowing from its eyes. "You remember your people, don't you?" Amy said softly. "You remember what you were before they changed you." Mordak made another musical sound, this one clearly expressing grief and loss. Amy reached out slowly and placed her hand on the creature's snout. The biomechanical armor felt cold and artificial, but underneath she could feel warmth and life. "I'm going to help you," Amy promised, "but I need you to help me too." "Can you access the arena's systems? Can you show everyone what really happened to your people?" The creature's eyes brightened with understanding. Mordak stood up and moved to one of the larger ruins. It placed both of its clawed hands on the stone surface, and suddenly the arena began to change. The artificial rocky landscape dissolved, replaced by images that came from Mordak's own memories. The watching Kithara saw scenes of a beautiful world, filled with crystal cities and peaceful beings who looked like Mordak had before his transformation. The images showed the arrival of the Kithara fleet and the destruction that followed. They showed the few survivors being taken captive, and the horrible experiments that turned a gentle philosopher into a killing machine. "This is impossible," Vextar shouted. "The arena systems are not designed to do this. The creature is interfacing directly with our technology," one of the technicians reported. "It has access to systems we didn't even know existed." But the revelations weren't finished. Mordak's connection to the arena's systems had awakened something else. Across the Kithara ship, other imprisoned beings began to stir. The psychic link that had been used to control Mordak was working in reverse, carrying his newfound freedom to every other captive. In the prison area, Velthar felt the change immediately. "Something is happening," he told Quinrex. "The control systems are failing." Throughout the ship, Kithara guards found themselves facing prisoners who were no longer docile and controlled. The uprising that had been building for centuries was finally beginning. Back in the arena, Amy and Mordak were working together to broadcast the truth to the watching galaxy. Through the arena's communication systems, the images of the destroyed world and its peaceful people were being transmitted to every corner of the Kithara Empire. On dozens of conquered worlds, beings who had never known the truth about their oppressors finally understood what had really happened to the peaceful race that had once lived in harmony with the universe. "Stop this immediately," Vextar commanded his guards. "Kill both the human and the creature." But when the guards tried to enter the arena, they found their way blocked. Mordak had taken control of the ship's security systems, sealing the arena and protecting Amy from harm. The massive creature turned to Amy and made another musical sound, this one filled with gratitude and determination. Then, to the shock of everyone watching, Mordak carefully removed the clawed weapons that had been grafted onto its hands and laid them at Amy's feet. The gesture was unmistakable. The greatest weapon in the Kithara Empire was surrendering, not in defeat but in recognition of Amy's compassion and courage. The watching audience fell silent. For 3,000 years they had seen Mordak as an unstoppable force of destruction. Now they were seeing it as what it really was, a victim who had finally found someone willing to help. "The human has done the impossible," Velthar said in amazement as he and the other prisoners watched the broadcast from their cells. "She has awakened the sleeper." But Vextar was not finished. Enraged by what he saw as the ultimate humiliation, he ordered his personal guard to prepare for a direct assault on the arena. "If the creature will not kill the human, then we will kill them both ourselves." Amy saw the armed guards gathering outside the arena's sealed entrance. She looked at Mordak, who was clearly weakened by the effort of fighting its programming and controlling the ship's systems. "Can you hold them off?" she asked. Mordak looked at the approaching guards, then back at Amy. It made a sound that Amy interpreted as determination mixed with sadness. The creature was willing to fight to protect her, but they both knew it couldn't hold out forever against the entire Kithara military. That's when Jake's voice crackled through the arena's communication system. "Amy, we've accessed the ship's main computer. Lisa's transmitting everything to Earth. The whole world is watching this." Amy smiled. Even if she and Mordak didn't survive, the truth would live on. The galaxy would know what the Kithara Empire really was, and that knowledge would spread like fire among the oppressed peoples of 100 worlds. But Mordak had one more surprise. The creature moved to the center of the arena and began to sing. Not the musical sounds it had been making before, but a complex harmony that resonated through the ship's hull and out into the ocean itself. Far below, in the deepest trenches of the Earth's oceans, ancient sensors that had been dormant for thousands of years suddenly activated. Mordak's song was not just music. It was a signal, a call for help that reached across space to surviving members of his people who had been hiding in the darkness of the deep places, waiting for a sign that it was safe to emerge. The song that Mordak sang echoed through the water around the Kithara ship and spread outward across the ocean floor. Within minutes, the ship's sensors detected multiple large objects rising from the deepest trenches of the Pacific Ocean. Amy watched in amazement as the display screen showed dozens of vessels emerging from hiding places that had concealed them for thousands of years. These ships were clearly built by the same people as Mordak, but they showed no signs of the biomechanical modifications that the Kithara had forced upon their captured brother. Impossible, Vextar whispered from his command position. We destroyed them all. There can be no survivors. But the evidence was rising from the depths before his eyes. The peaceful people that the Kithara thought they had completely destroyed had actually been hiding in the deepest parts of Earth's oceans, waiting and watching. On the surface, every government on Earth was receiving the same transmission that had been broadcast throughout the Kithara Empire. The footage of Amy's encounter with Mordak, the truth about the creature's origins, and now the revelation that Earth's oceans had been hiding an ancient civilization for thousands of years. In the arena, Amy felt the ship shudder as the first of the surviving vessels made contact with the Kithara city ship. Through the communication system, she heard voices speaking in the same musical language that Mordak had been using. Your people, she said to the creature. They're alive. They survived. Mordak's response was pure joy, a sound that filled the arena with harmonious music. But the reunion was interrupted as Vextar's guards finally broke through the sealed entrance to the arena. Kill them both, Vextar ordered through the communication system. I will not allow this humiliation to continue. But as the guards raised their weapons, the arena's walls suddenly became transparent. Through them, Amy could see that the Kithara ship was now surrounded by vessels from dozens of different species. Word of what had happened had spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. The broadcast of Amy's compassion toward Mordak had sparked something that the Kithara Empire had never faced before. A coordinated uprising by every species they had ever conquered or oppressed. Supreme Commander, one of the technicians called out, we are receiving surrender demands from 17 different star systems. The conquered worlds are declaring independence. Through the transparent walls of the arena, Amy could see explosions of light as battles began throughout the Kithara fleet. But these were not the one-sided conflicts that the Empire was used to. For the first time in their history, the Kithara were facing united opposition from species that had learned to work together. Velthar and the other prisoners had broken free from their cells and were making their way toward the arena. The guards have abandoned their posts, Velthar reported as he reached the arena entrance. Most of them are trying to reach escape pods. Quinrex was with him, along with dozens of other prisoners from across the galaxy. The Empire is crumbling, the gentle Astari said. Your act of kindness has shown everyone that the Kithara are not invincible. But even as the Kithara Empire fell apart around them, Supreme Commander Vextar was not ready to surrender. He appeared at the arena entrance with a small group of his most loyal guards. If the Empire dies today, he said, raising his own weapon, then you will die with it. Human. Before he could fire, Mordak moved with lightning speed, placing itself between Amy and the weapon. But this time the creature was not alone. Through the arena's entrance came 3 more beings that looked like Mordak had before his transformation. His people had come to save him. Stand down, Vextar, one of the newcomers said in perfect Kithara language. Your empire's crimes have been exposed to the galaxy. Surrender now and we will show you more mercy than you showed our brother. For a moment it looked like Vextar might fight anyway, but then he saw what Amy saw. The displays showing Kithara ships surrendering or fleeing across dozens of star systems. The empire that had dominated the galaxy for 3,000 years was ending. The Supreme Commander lowered his weapon. What will happen to my people? He asked. That depends on what your people choose to do now, Amy said, stepping forward. Some of them, like Velthar, have already chosen to help instead of harm. The galaxy has room for everyone, but not for empires built on conquest. Over the following hours, Amy found herself in the middle of the most important negotiations in galactic history. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the Kithara ship to discuss what would come next. Many wanted revenge against the Kithara, but Amy argued for a different approach. Revenge will just create more enemies, she said. What we need is justice and healing. Mordak, now free from the biomechanical modifications that had been forced upon him, became Amy's closest advisor in these talks. His people brought advanced technology that could help repair some of the damage the Empire had caused, while their wisdom helped guide the formation of a new galactic community. Jake and Lisa had become heroes in their own right, their technical skills helping to establish communication networks between all the different species. It's amazing, Lisa said as she watched the first joint broadcast from the new alliance. A week ago, we were just studying fish. The most difficult challenge was deciding what to do with the Kythera themselves. Many of their people had been raised to believe that conquest was their destiny, but others, like Velthar, were eager to find a new way forward. Amy proposed a solution that surprised everyone. "The Kythera are excellent at organization and administration," she said. "Instead of conquering worlds, why not help them manage the new alliance?" It was a radical idea, turning former oppressors into administrators for their former victims, but under careful oversight and with many Kythera genuinely wanting to make amends for their past, it began to work. 6 months later, Amy stood on the bridge of a ship unlike any that had ever existed before. It was built using technology from a dozen different species, crewed by beings from across the galaxy, and dedicated to exploration and peaceful contact rather than conquest. Mordak stood beside her, now serving as the ship's cultural liaison. The scars of his long captivity would never fully heal, but he had found purpose in helping other species understand each other. "The first survey mission is ready to depart," Jake reported from his position as the ship's chief engineer. He had spent months learning to integrate human Kythera and other alien technologies. "And we have responses from 47 previously unknown civilizations that want to join the Alliance," Lisa added from her communication station. Amy looked out at the stars and thought about how much had changed. She had started as a marine biologist studying strange readings from the ocean floor. Now she was an admiral in a galactic alliance, commanding a ship that carried the hopes of hundreds of worlds. "Set course for the Andromeda Relay," she ordered. "Let's go introduce ourselves to some new neighbors." As the ship moved away from Earth toward its first mission, Amy reflected on the lesson that had started it all. Sometimes the most powerful weapon against hatred and oppression was not force, but simple compassion. Sometimes the key to changing the galaxy was just being willing to see the person inside the monster. Behind them, Earth's oceans were no longer empty of intelligent life. Mordak's people had emerged from their hiding places and were working with human scientists to heal the damage that centuries of pollution had caused. The partnership between humans and the ancient ocean dwellers was becoming a model for cooperation that other worlds were eager to copy. The Kythera Empire was gone, but in its place was something better. A community of worlds united not by force, but by the shared belief that every intelligent being deserved respect and freedom. And at the center of it all was the simple truth that Amy had discovered in an alien arena. No matter how different two species might seem, there was always a chance for understanding if someone was brave enough to try.